So let's talk about infidelity, and in particular, the fact that as sex tech continues to advance, couples are having a harder and harder time identifying what constitutes infidelity. What is an affair? Because decades ago, people used to put affairs into just two categories. There would be a sexual or, physical affair, so that would have some sort of body connection, or there'd be an emotional affair, so that would be an emotional connection. And that's really how affairs were kind of considered.
Before we start, a small disclaimer. The Sex Doctors podcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice.
But today, there are so many ways that people can potentially be unfaithful. And to add complexity to that, people have different opinions about what constitutes cheating. So, for example, if you have a chatbot and you're sexting a chatbot, that's not a human, that's a computer program. But if you're sexting, is that cheating? Some people will say yes, and others will say no. What about if you have an emotional connection with that chatbot? What if you contact that chatbot every day and talk about your day and what your challenges were during the day and get, sort of support? Is that an emotional affair? What if you say, I love you to your chatbot? How's that? Is that an emotional affair? So you can see how very complicated this gets. How about VR porn? So porn, there used to be some disagreement, or there still is, let's say, disagreement about whether or not porn is cheating. But as porn gets more advanced, like virtual reality porn, those questions are going to be amplified even more. So VR porn feels even more real. It feels like whatever's going on in the porn is either happening to you or you're in the room with whatever's going on, as opposed to just watching it on your phone or a computer screen. So it amps up the intensity considerably. In fact, the research that's out there now comparing traditional 2D porn, two-dimensional porn on your computer screen, and VR porn shows that pretty consistently, people experience VR porn as more intimate. They show, for example, an oxytocin release with watching VR porn that isn't seen when watching 2D porn. And it's also more intense. People describe it as more intense. And some research shows actually that ejaculate quality is different in terms of the concentration of sperm for guys that are masturbating to VR porn versus 2D porn. It's really incredible. So as we see VR porn getting more and more intense, what's that going to mean for couples in terms of figuring out what is fair and not fair game in terms of, sexual behavior outside of the relationship? So in general, men are more lenient about these behaviors than women are in general, but of course, everybody's different. And if you're in a couple, you can expect that you're going to have a different opinion about this than your partner. It's just natural because there are so many ways to engage sex tech. It's really unlikely the two of you are going to agree on everything. So even if it feels logical to you, like, of course that is cheating, it's not necessarily going to be logical to your partner. And couples tend not to have these conversations, probably because they don't want to, that they don't want to hear what their partner thinks is fair, so they'd rather not fight, so they don't talk about it. But the problem with that, as you can imagine, is that things can go pretty wrong if people don't express where they stand with this stuff and come to some agreements and generally some compromises. So you got to talk about it. Now, what I would say to you is when you have these conversations, don't expect that you're going to agree right away, and don't expect to solve it all right away. First, what you want to do is just start a dialogue. So this is more of maybe an ongoing conversation, and you start by talking about, you could say you saw this video today, let's watch it together, and get your dialogue started that way. But what you want to do is identify why something feels like cheating to you, rather than just say, oh, that's cheating, you can't do that. And then that's going to set you both up potentially for more of a fight. Talk about what's uncomfortable for you about it. So maybe it makes you feel less attractive when your partner engages whatever sex tech, or maybe it makes you feel less important to your partner. Whatever. You've got to kind of go deep within yourself and see what's upsetting you and express that to your partner rather than just, sort of come down hard on it. No way, you can't do that. Have a real intimate conversation about why it's stressful to you, why it's challenging to you. And then your goal is going to be to find compromises. And see also if you can't incorporate sex tech in some way into your relationship. And that might be with new sex toys. There are new sex toys coming out all the time, or whatever else, chatbots or whatever. So see if you can bring some of that technology into your relationship to amp things up, make things more interesting, because certainly couples can do that, but they got to talk about it first in order to make use of that. So bring it in to your relationship if you can. And so approach the conversation with some open-hearted care, okay? Knowing you're going to disagree, and knowing it's going to take some time, but also knowing that it's not insurmountable for the two of you to talk it through. And if it does really feel insurmountable, get a therapist and talk it through with your therapist. Hope that's helpful.